Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into Jackrabbit Illustrated. Thank you for joining us late at night here on the Jackrabbit Illustrated Facebook, Jackrabbit Illustrated Twitter, and the FCS Fans Nation YouTube. As always, we are grateful to our title sponsor, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota. 10 locations across the great state of location. The great state of location. Don't even know what that means. The great state of South Dakota.
Come on, man. We got two teams in this state in the semifinals. You got to get this right, dude.
I'm just struggling here tonight. Them early games and early tailgates of the late night shows.
This, relatively speaking, is not that late for us, but
right
when we both started pretty early, this definitely is. But we got to get used to this because it's going to be the same thing next week.
Yep. So
there is a next week.
Yeah, right. Kubota Dealers of South Dakota with 10 locations across the great state of South Dakota. There's always a Kubota dealer near you. They've got attachments, equipment, and service and parts and more. Get yourself into some orange equipment today. They'll be able to take care of anything you need on your farm, ranch, or at home. So get yourself into some orange equipment today, as well as our title sponsor for the late night with Borg. It is Jackrabbit Central, the number one place to get all your Jackrabbit gear and apparel you may need. I got this shirt here, there, and many, many, many other articles of clothing. I always have people ask me where we get the bibs. That is at Jackrabbit Central with locations at the bookstore on campus, the location in the stadium, which is open for all regular season games, and then the location in downtown Brookings. Jackrabbit Central is the place to go, as well as online. And Touchdown Tuesday this week will be maxed out, putting up a 50 burger. So wait until Tuesday, go online and get the big saves. So here we go. And what a game it was. Jax came out and dominated. Patrick Firk saying the Valley O-lines are just different, man, and they are. They really are. I think you saw that kind of across the board here today with the Valley teams. You've got 3 of the semifinalists from one conference. I'm curious how long that's been since that's happened.
Adam Izzo said that's the first time ever.
First time ever. Yeah.
From one conference.
Pretty incredible. Damien says, yeah, I was not expecting clinic like that. Kevin is still trying to stand up for the SoCon that lost by 21 points or 3 scores today. But
I got to give it to them. They Mercer hung in there. I mean,
they had a great defense. They just, don't know how to operate on the other side of the ball. That's exactly,
I was getting I was getting texts when it was 14-0. I'm like, well, this game's over. And then, of course, right away they cut it to 14-7. And NDSU's in a weird place right now as we go to this semifinal because obviously there was the game last week where they get down right away. And if they'd gone down 21-3, who knows if we're even talking about them being here right now. In the week leading up to this game, Polisek comes out and says Mercer is our Super Bowl. And he kind of called out his own team for maybe looking ahead to the SDSU game, which is now here. And, of course, there was the little there's the word, too, that Northern Illinois is probably getting into the Mountain West. So their thing's gone if it ever was a thing. So you just kind of wonder where NDSU – you'd think this will clear their head coming into the SDSU game, which we can talk more about them in a minute. But, yeah, I credit Mercer. I thought that could have really gone sideways. I think – maybe NDSU kind of put it in neutral when they got up so big, but credit Mercer, their defense was really good. And if they had a little more offense, it's a big improvement from where we saw them a year ago when they just, they wouldn't have had a shot against last year's Jackrabbit team, but
right.
I wasn't overly optimistic with anything I saw last year. And they made a big jump from last year to this year with a new coach too.
Yeah, and we'll get into that game probably more later today. But, we knew they had a good defense. Kind of went exactly how I thought. Oh, I'm sorry. They didn't lose by 21. They lost by more than that. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, they had a great defense. It's kind of what we knew. And they didn't have an offense. They didn't even get 200 yards total in the game. That's not good. But for the Jacks game, for me, for what it was, and we'll get into the rest of the, I know Ron's in here and a lot of comments about Mercer. They look good and all that stuff on their defense and everything.
I nodded at you, Adam, with the traffic. I don't know. I'm kind of busy in the traffic. I'm kind of trying to keep my eye on the road when it was.
He's got his stuff going to go. He's got stuff going on, man. But this game, when at surface, you just look at it and it's a blowout and everything else. You win 55-14. Claims of Incarnate Word's terrible and all this stuff by certain people because he's mad about polling and everything. But in the end, it is a quarterfinal team. They did win games to get into the quarterfinals. They beat another seeded team to get into the quarterfinals. And whether it was an easy route or a tough route, they're still a quarterfinal team. Were they the best quarterfinal team? No, not at all. But looking at this game as a Jacks fan, I mean, from the start, the Jacks have been dominant. And if you're an SDSU fan, you need to step back and appreciate this run of 3 years. If you have any complaints and you're about to start complaining during a game about what was this play call, whatever, you need to take a step back, because when I go through, I went through because some account on Twitter had posted all the scores from 2022, 2023, and 2024 playoff runs so far. What do you think the average margin of victory is for SDSU in those 3 years so far, including this week?
God, it's got to be getting, well, I mean, there's only really the one. It's funny because even the close games ended up becoming blowouts. They just pulled away.
Right.
Like Holy Cross is really the one that I think of as the closest, but they ended up winning by 3 touchdowns, even though I think it was tied going to the fourth. So I guess the average margin is probably about 24, 28.
29.1 points per game. That is the average margin of victory. There has only been, by my count in that stretch, 2 games that the margin of victory started with the digit 1 in it. And that was one of those was the Montana game. So that's silly. That is just absolute insanity that this program is humming like that.
Especially coming from this team in particular, because we didn't necessarily know. I mean, that could change in the next 2 games, if there are 2 games, because obviously the quality is going to get a lot tougher going on the road for this next one. And then if they win that, you're going to a championship against either the best team ever from Montana State, potentially, or the best team ever from USD. But, I mean, this team was kind of a mixed bag. We didn't know what to expect. So for them to dominate the way they did these first 2 games, like you said, especially when Incarnate Word did push them a little bit the first time around. I know it was, they seemed a little undermanned, and there were some I found their 4th down play calling a little interesting, to put it mildly, as we discussed that. But I mean, I was impressed with them when they came out here the first time. Calzada is a pretty tough quarterback. Those receivers, Jimmy said several times, were among the best in the FCS, and it wasn't just the weather. It was you could tell a lot had changed. And the thing of it is, I know right now, granted, they're not going to be too pissed off, but they're probably pretty ticked off they gave up the 14 because they have that 10-point rule where they want to keep everybody at 10 or lower. So, they're just, KP, I heard some interesting thing when you talk about Fargo or Bozeman. Aside from the whole wanting the revenge factor, I was kind of hearing from people I think a lot of them would have preferred Fargo just because they're more familiar with that setting. And it is indoors. I mean, both places are loud. There's going to be big crowds. I mean, obviously, I know Fargo's having their attendance issues right now. They only had 10,000 again, but you can probably assume it's going to be sold out. If it's not, I would be stunned. Both places are loud, but it is indoors. You control the elements. And again, Bozeman, it's just not a place you're used to playing in. They're more comfortable in the Fargo Dome. They've won there. Granted, this is kind of one of the last things they've yet to do is win a playoff game there. But, definitely a different situation when you're going to a place like Bozeman where you haven't played much before, and it's going to be outdoors, and who knows what the weather. Granted, they're used to the outdoors as well, but, you can get some really crazy weather, as we saw that 2014 playoff game when it dumped a blizzard on them, and they won 45-42 with Zenner. But
Yep.
yeah, I think a lot of them, aside from the whole revenge factor, probably prefer Fargo right now.
Well, I mean, yeah, so Kevin was asking is if he should go to Fargo or Bozeman. I'd say this: I'd probably go to Bozeman if I were you, Kevin, because A, you're closer. B, I think it's just honestly more of a unique matchup, and give me an outside atmosphere over a dome any day. As much as I love the marker game and marker rematches and everything like that. But based off his location, I would go there. But based off of him being a thin-blooded Southern boy, the Fargo Dome might be a little more welcoming to his temperament and being out in the cold. So there is that to factor in. But personally, I'd go to Bozeman. That's just me.
I agree with you there. From a fan sentiment, there's nothing better than outdoor football, even if it is cold in the winter. But I think from the team standpoint, I think they're more comfortable playing in the place they've regularly played in. And of course, again, you can control the elements there too. But fan standpoint, yeah, I know, if we have any USD fans watching right now, I would suggest trying to make that trip to Bozeman because that's an awesome venue to watch at. Good game day atmosphere. Hopefully, if the Bobcats win, they won't run up and flip your players off right after the game like they did in 2021. That was a little classless, but otherwise, that was everything I've heard was nothing was pretty much positive from that trip. Beyond that, beyond a couple of Dingleberry students up there. So, but yeah, I think.
So right. And I am gonna jump on this here quick because I've seen a bunch of comments, and this is all I'm gonna address for the attendance and domes and everything else. I will take a crowd of 8,000 people in a 19,000 seat stadium outside in the snow in the quarterfinals 1,000 times over a packed dome. Absolutely, it is such a party at those games, and it's hard to explain. I don't feel bad for the people that missed it. Whatever reason or excuse you had for not being there, okay, that's fine. Whatever. I'm past trying to cajole and beg people to go because these are the most fun games to go to. It is an absolute blast at those games. It's a party atmosphere the entire time. It just feels like a big celebration. And in the end, it doesn't matter. It does. Home field advantage matters, and everything. But you know what? You're winning by 29.1 points per game. The players deserve a crowd that's packed out. But beyond that, I have tons and tons of fun at these games. The crowd is what it is. And you know what? For all the Montana fans that keep saying, why is it half empty? Why is it half empty? Well, it's because we need room for the national championships that we're winning recently that you don't have. So whatever. But it is a lot of fun. And that kind of, it is what it is. Okay, well. So, but beyond that, it was fun. You could see once they got down, and the amazing thing to me is I believe the Jacks early in the game were a -2 in the turnover differential early in the game.
Well, I think it wasn't -2 because they turned it over right away with that fumble where Chase
fumble
Mason
was Marks before or after they.
It was after because they got at least they might have been even at that point because I know they'd gotten a turnover. Because Calzada threw the pick to Durance, and then that kind of when they got up 14-0, and then Gronowski's pick came kind of late in the half, but nothing came. So I think they were even at that point. But yeah, basically you're right. This is the second straight game they started with a fumble on an opening drive where it looked like they were just going to easily walk into the end zone.
They got to knock that off.
Yeah, that's
not
that will
going to
not fly next week, or if they get to a championship game against whoever. But I didn't see that one. I mean that looked like a pretty good strip. I don't know if that was necessarily. I don't know. I didn't see it that well. The Montana one was a bad handoff.
Yeah, from where I was sitting, and like the Montana one, I don't even think that was a bad handoff from watching it on TV. It just the guy was in his face right away and it got knocked out. And then when the one today, it looked like Chase was just fighting for a little extra like he does. And later in the game, he seemed to start making some more quarterback decisions when he was running the ball, going out of bounds instead of getting the extra yards, things that he needs to do, honestly. And so if that was his learning experience for that, awesome, because it had to happen. But man, gotta stop doing that early in the game. But even with that happening early in the game, defense bows up, doesn't let them score. Absolute blowout by halftime, 31-0 at half. They come out and score a couple touchdowns.
And right away at a 50, right away SDSU, it's a 59-yarder on their first.
Yeah, to David Alpers. They finally hit a seam route to a tight end. That's exciting. And when you're looking at this team, I think as a Jacks fan, you got to feel good that the offense feels like it's starting to click, or is fully clicking, is what it feels like. And I guess my last thing on the atmosphere and everything else, you see the photo we have for our background here, Mark, his last home game, walking off the field at the Dana for the last time, getting to see this senior class one last time at the Dana, arguably the most impactful senior class we've had, with Mark and Adam Bach and Caleb Frankel, and I mean, you can go down the list, Cale Reeder, Graham Spalding, Kevin Brenner, Gus Miller, Jared DePriest, Bernstein, just gobs of dudes. That this class is when the run started, when we first made the national title game in the spring. And say whatever you want about the spring, but this class has been there and carried the standard all the way through. And getting to see those guys have such an awesome game for their last showing at the Dana was really cool. That's something I'm gonna remember for a long time, because I think this senior class, they're all special. I mean, last year's class with Mason and all those guys was incredible. You have 8 guys go to the NFL, but this class, I think, will always have a really special place in Jacks fans' heart. Damien says Mark is 31-0 at Dana J. I mean, incredible. That's more wins than a lot of quarterbacks have in their career, let alone being 31-0.
Tied the FCS wins record too today.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he tied the wins record today. That'll be a storyline going up to Fargo, getting the chance to break.
It's tough as it was seeing them hoist the rock.
Yeah,
it's playing out to the script, isn't it? I mean, if you believe in a script writer scripting this,
Yep, I said at the beginning of the year, I said I think the emotion's going to carry NDSU in the marker game, and then I think the Jacks will get their revenge in the playoffs. And just this game alone is kind of a microcosm of that, really shows how much these Jacks teams develop throughout the year, how much they improve from game 1 to game 15. It's crazy. They hit that playoff gear. And I mean, that's just shown by the scores that they've had in the playoffs, right? But I mean, look at this score compared to the first week. 55-14. This game was never close, never in doubt.
Unlike the first one, which was a tie game late in the third, midway through the third. I think it was either 7 or it was still close going to the fourth in the first one.
Yeah. That is it's this team hits a playoff gear. They absolutely hit a playoff gear, and they are rolling.
And I like to, I especially equate this, and of course, I watched my favorite NFL team go on a championship run last year, and they did it primarily on the road, which we're going to have to see next week. And it's one of those things where it's like, the regular season only means so much. It's, can you do this in the playoffs? This is when you make your money. This is when it matters. And obviously, it's a little different for college because you're talking about kids, and it's a little more developmental, especially at this stage of it compared to the NFL. But there you can just tell the teams that know how to win in the postseason and know how to just kind of turn on a different gear. You don't have to, you don't have to, especially when you have a playoff system as opposed to what with the old bowl. You don't have to go for style points. I mean, maybe that helps in some seeding, but it's all about how you're playing right now, how you're playing at this juncture. And they definitely, they've had the only time I can really think of where they weren't playing their best going in was probably 2019, but they were so banged up with injuries. I still think if that team had been healthy, they might have challenged NDSU because they were the only team that gave that Bison team a game in 2019. So, and like I said, that's been a consistent thing. They've been playing well going into the playoffs. Well, I guess you can't necessarily say that because obviously remember what happened in 2021. It didn't quite go so well there at the end, but they obviously found the switch in the playoffs when they had to go on the road. But yeah, usually they turn it on, and it's pretty good. Yeah, Garrett, man. I mean, yeah, you're right. The turnover woes, but like I said, they were primarily in 2019. They were down to a third-string quarterback, and I think their third-string running back. I mean, Mikey Daniel was playing halfback at that point. That team was lucky they got a seed and then lost it. Showed you where they were going. That they only lost that game to UNI by 3, and that's their only home playoff loss. Ever right now. So they're now what? I think they're 17-1 now, all time at home too in the playoffs. So, 20. I'm not going to quite go there with 2022 yet.
And
not quite yet. Not ready to do that yet.
Since you were mentioning, the playoff record at home, the overall playoff record to me is really impressive. At I believe it's 24-11 now in the FCS playoffs. Considering if you don't win a national title, you always get a loss in the playoff.
Yeah. And they obviously started off pretty rough and
behind the 8 ball, yeah,
because
there was a lot of second round, first round losses there, and then if you're in the second round, so. Used to definitely be around 500 or below 500, and that has obviously you go on national title runs, that makes a huge difference. But yeah, getting up to that level is pretty impressive. It's hard to find many programs that have a winning record in the playoffs overall.
Yeah, and it's just been obviously also helps too that there's I think we've gone up in number of games because I know when they went to their first playoff in 2009, I don't think there was as many teams or as many rounds, but
I think that was the 16-team playoff still.
Yeah, but and although you can also make a case too, they get one less game because they get the seed. Obviously,
yep.
They've been getting the seed. They've been getting seeded pretty much every year except the 2021 year, and there was even one less game in the COVID year. Because that was a shortened playoff too. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been, this game, I didn't really feel, they said all the right things. I just think the one thing, it feels like it's just been all business for this team. We'll see we'll see how it plays. I mean, you can't really judge one week to the other because everything can flip on a dime in the playoffs, but it feels like they of all the teams, I can't really speak for Montana State. I'm only really judging by what we've seen in the Dakotas. They seem the most unaffected by anything at this point. Like, it's like they just came out this week. It was like, yeah, whatever, cool. whatever that was supposed to happen. I mean, the fact Jimmy was kind of pissed off that they struggled a little bit at the end against Montana in garbage time, it probably tells you a little bit where they're at. I mean, if I were, and ironically, as we head into this semifinal, I would say teams that are kind of like in the best mindset up here, it's probably SDSU, USD, and NDSU, because it seems like the Bison have felt a little more pressure the last few weeks. Now we'll see how that plays, because now this is the game. But it's going to be they're in a different. I do want to caution getting too high on the offense, because obviously they were playing pretty well when they went into Fargo the first time. I think the difference is, though, it seems like Mark is a little more. Seems like he's kind of more locked in. Although he threw one bad pick, which was kind of a WTF moment. But when you're up 28-0 or whatever,
I think he got hit when he was throwing on that one.
Okay, I didn't necessarily see the hit, because I had him coming at me. So if he got hit, I didn't necessarily. I did kind of wonder, because I'm like, he threw that. That's like the worst throw I've seen him make since the Fargo game. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I mean, the throws him and which is going to be a key factor going to Fargo, because obviously the first time they played up there, Griffin Wilde was invisible. He's going to have to play a role. I mean, he's got 4 touchdowns now in the playoffs. I mean, he's just, and obviously I'm very curious to see how they're going to play. And I don't know yet what our plans are going to be for this. It's going to be incidentally, by the way, both semifinals are on ABC/KSFY. There you go, right hand. So we're going to have a busy day. So,
and you guys are going to have the Road to Frisco show again?
Yeah, we're going to have a pregame show. I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet. I know the higher ups are going to get together here in the next 24 hours and figure it out. I'm hoping we send somebody up to Fargo, whether that's me or whoever. I mean, that's obviously the easy one. Really want to get somebody out to Bozeman too, because I'm like, this is pretty rare, and you never know if it's going to happen again.
Right.
So, and I think maybe a post-game show would be a good thing too, just because, again, both games are on our network. But obviously we'll see. It's kind of tough it's a little tougher to get to Bozeman than it is Fargo, but the Fargo one I would hope we can get to, and we'll see. We should be announcing something here, obviously, within the next 24, 48 hours. But with the game on our network, we obviously really need to. We did have a Road to Frisco. I'm going to probably hop on the YouTube thing with my own thing and post the links, because we do have I posted again, as you guys know, if you're a long timer, or if you just dropping on for the first time, if you don't know, we cannot post highlights from the FCS playoffs. They don't let us shoot our own video, and they don't allow us to post the game video that we run during our shows on the web. But we skirt a little bit around that. I shoot pregame and I shoot postgame video, kind of them walking off. I got this shot of Mark here, although somebody blocked me when he did this point, so I didn't quite get the emotional point. I think I got him hugging Danny Freund, and actually on the video I tweeted out, you can hear him saying, "Let's break the record next week." So Bozeman is a little nicer than Fargo, though. You got to admit, Bozeman is a little nicer than Fargo, and by a little I mean a lot.
Borg would not be able to do this show and talk as much Jacks as he talks the USD games on Jackrabbit Illustrated without them throwing a fit. So,
the good thing is I would have time to watch the SDSU game before the USD game starts, and I guarantee you there will probably be a lot of I guarantee both fan bases. Obviously, if SDSU wins, if you guys win, if you guys lost, I don't know if you'd be watching that game so much. But
I wouldn't.
If SDSU wins, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will automatically be tuning that game on just to see who they're going to face next either way. But I would assume there are going to be a lot of eyes in Bozeman watching that first game regardless, for both sides, because obviously Montana State the Dakotas have been very mean to them for the last 5-6 years, and now they're seeing the other Dakota school that they've never seen before. But they're going to have their eyes on what's going on in Fargo. So But yeah, it's we should have we'll have something good. We do have our Road to Frisco show that was pretty good this morning. I was
I'm
live
real
from
curious with USD on the road how they're going to do, especially in that hostile of an environment. Because yes, they showed out in the game in Brookings, but let's be honest, that was super emotionally charged game. They really felt this was the year to get that win in Brookings. But in the end, they end up losing in overtime. But here's their other road game performances. They lost at Wisconsin 27-13. FBS game, not a bad performance, whatever. But they blew out Murray State, but then 27-17 at Youngstown. 42-36 at North Dakota. And that's the extent of their road experience this year.
They had one other road one too, but I could be wrong.
They had Wisconsin, Murray State, Youngstown State, SDSU, and North Dakota. The Portland State game got canceled. They only played.
That's true. I thought they had one more conference road game, but I guess I'm
so
biffing that.
I think that is a factor because they have not, especially to finish the season out here, have not performed particularly strong on the road.
Well, it's just one of those things. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Montana State just looked so good last night. It's hard to pick against them, but at the same time, it's like I'm not putting my money against USD because I feel like they've been getting picked against all year. Whether it was people who had them on the bubble before they went to UND, or people who were saying, well, if they lose to NDSU, they're not going to be a seed, or people who were picking. Davis was a trendy pick today. Davis was a real trendy pick. Now, and now I don't know what happened to Land. Now they did catch a break. Land Larison got hurt. I don't know what happened to him.
That's a huge
break.
Too.
But they got a lot of players on that team. Miles Hastings has been the quarterback there forever. He's had a hell of a year. They got good. They picked him off 5 times in that game. And they got good talent too. They had good depth. Defensively, they look a little more like a Big Sky team, but and for what it was worth, the coach for Davis said he thinks it's going to be a hell of a game next week. When asked about how he felt, now I wouldn't expect much less. I don't think he's going to say that the team they just lost to is going to go get their butt kicked, but whether or not he thinks it, but I just, obviously I'm guessing the point line's probably going to be 7-12, maybe. I would assume in that range for a spread. I don't know. We'll see. I wouldn't bet against them because everybody keeps betting against USD and they keep finding. I think the nice thing for them is they've won 2 games kind of in different fashions where they had some things going against them. Obviously the Tarleton game was very weird with the way they ran that slow roll mesh offense, and they still managed to win. Today, they turned the ball.
The only thing that gives me pause is, you look at is their defensive performance. 36 points to North Dakota, 28 points to NDSU, 31 points to Tarleton. This was their best game at 21, and that took 5 interceptions. And realistically, and I'm not dogging on you USD fans, but generally speaking, if I look at a game and you got 5 turnovers off the other team, that should be a blowout. And it was not. That was still a game.
Actually, I think 7. Because part of this was they had 4 themselves because I think they had 4-3 because they had 2 turnovers inside the Davis 5.
Well, yeah, they threw that one interception in the end zone.
Yeah, the one interception got pinballed because I think it was in a guy's hands and then it got knocked out. That was right before the half, and then early in the third quarter they pitch it to Pierre and he drops the ball, and I think at least there. In my head, because I was actually driving to Vermilion at this point, I still wasn't, it was a little rougher on the drive down. But in my head, I'm thinking they might blow. They're going to blow this game because when you keep turning it over inside the 5, naturally you're thinking, well, it's still a 7-point game, and they could lose this game, but they're winning games that you just would not have associated them winning at any point over the last decade. there is a resilience there. Now they're going to have to get off to and offensively before they kind of went into a lull, they were clicking. I mean, and they got JJ Galbraith back, which was huge. I mean, he was a big chain mover for them today, and I think we knew that was going to be a big one. But yeah, I think the one thing, and again, there is a little bit of I'm not going to put an asterisk on it, but the one thing that has been consistent is they've been good against the run, which is what Montana State's bread and butter is going to be. Now again, Larison being out today. I got the
here's the thing though too, like they've been good against the run, but I think the problem with Montana State, you've got to be great against the run.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's going to be interesting with them is, I mean, obviously they're going to have, I think I heard they're going to have Humphrey back, who was out last night. Adam Jones, who could well have won the Rice, Adam Jones could well have won the Rice Award. Those two guys are over 1,000 yards, and of course you got to deal with Malott. I think that's the more dangerous one because obviously the only guy who's really given them, and they to their credit, I think they pretty much shut down almost every team they faced from a running standpoint. But the only guys that have really run for anything are the quarterbacks. It was Miller a few weeks ago who broke off a few runs. I think he took some sacks, so I don't know where his overall yardage ended up being. And I remember in the SDSU game, Gronowski had a couple of runs. So I don't think their totals were spectacular, but their ability to get outside the pocket and make a play with their legs was something that USD struggled with a little bit. So that is something, obviously, with Malott, you worry about that because that dude, his first instinct is probably to run, but
hasn't been this year.
That's been the thing. They've cut back on it. You would assume they're going to do it. They're going to, it's his last year. I believe it's his last year. I don't think he has any eligibility left, or maybe
he's proven if you're going to sell out on the run. I mean, like, look at the UT Martin game. He went 22 for 25, 300 yards and 4 passing touchdowns.
Yeah. Now, granted, again, UT Martin, but I mean, we said that a couple of years ago when he was a freshman against the Jacks. We were like, okay, all they got to do is just force this guy to pass the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he killed him. Now, I do think their receivers in 2021 were better than they are now. I mean, those guys were just high pointing everything, and I feel like the Jacks just, but so I don't – that'll be the interesting thing. Can they – the other issue with Tommy, I think the reason they've cut back on the running is, I mean, we all know it's the elephant in the room. The guy gets injured. So, I mean, obviously they're going to put everything – they're going to throw it all out there for a playoff game, and it's his final year. But, UT Martin, not that physical. Idaho, I mean, that was kind of –
UT Martin was super physical. They held their rushing yards way down in that game.
Well, I'm just saying relative to a Valley team. Relative to a Valley team, it's not going to be the same.
Defensively, I think it was. Personally, defensively, their run defense, there's a reason they decided to pass the ball on them. And if Montana State's deciding to pass the ball, like that says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has to be the thing. They have to really make Montana State pass, and that's how you have to. Because, I mean, USD's secondary, even though they struggled a little bit the last few weeks, USD does have a good back end. That's got to be the way they beat them, because you can't let them get running downhill on you, especially in that stadium. It's just gonna eat you. It's gonna eat you alive, especially because Vegan runs a lot of old NDSU stuff. I mean, their offensive line, I think, has gotten much better. That was a problem for them the last couple of years. Or initially when they were trying to get going, is they just couldn't. They just couldn't get anything going. But yeah, I think, Malott. I mean, I think Damien makes a good point. Malott being 230 pounds, like Mark and Chase. I mean, they've got to really hit him hard. But I think USD does have a physical enough group to do it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just really hard. It's hard to, based on what we've seen in their playoff runs, but. Again, Davis is one of the only team that gave Montana State a run for their money this year, but not having Larison was a big break for USD. You can't not sugarcoat that. But I don't know. Like I said, I will say this. I got the same feeling I got from SDSU. SDSU has no fear about going up to NDSU. I did not get any of that. That's
well,
just,
USD. I don't think USD should be afraid of going up
No.
there in any capacity. They're absolutely one of the top 4 teams. This is what we've been saying since the SDSU USD game. We've been saying this. Quick shout out to the chat. If we're going to start doing these personal attacks and you're going to get explicit
guys,
and
come
stuff, you're going to be you get a timeout and then you're going to get banned. I'm not going to have you guys clogging it up while everybody else is chatting it up. I'm talking to you specifically, Sports Drop. I don't care what you're saying. Stop it. That's the one warning to everybody. Relax. Yeah, I can't believe I have to do that. This is the first time in 6 years of doing this podcast we've had to do this. Relax. So
yeah, Damien,
anyways,
I did read that wrong. My apologies. I was gonna say, I was like, man, if Tommy's up to 230. He's bulked up.
Yeah, no, he's not that.
He's not that big. But no, it's no, yeah, it'll be. And of course, you also wonder what the elements are going to be like. I mean, USD is a dome team. I'm sure they'll be practicing outdoors for the next week. But I think I've heard there's going to be snow up. They're expecting 6 to 12. I heard they're expecting about a foot on Tuesday. So we'll see what the forecast is in Bozeman. That could be another factor. They haven't had a bad weather game yet. And I don't know when the last time was USD did play in bad weather. So, or super cold weather for that matter.
Right.
It's been a while. But
they haven't had to play in weather at all of any form.
Really? I mean, yeah, I mean, well, obviously the playoffs, I mean, they've not played they haven't played a road playoff game in probably since 2017, to be honest, because their last couple losses were at home. They had the loss in 2021 to Southern Illinois, and obviously last year was to NDSU. This is their first road playoff game since their first playoff run, which is kind of weird to say and think. But yeah, because they played down in Louisiana at Nichols State in 2017, and then they lost a shootout at Sam Houston to end that season. So,
yeah,
I don't know about this year's
comparable. No,
not this year's night game. It's going to be way colder.
Year's night game. It's going to be way. Yeah, come on now.
I'll look that up right now and debunk that.
I was going to say I don't think it was
pretty
cold.
nice this year.
Yeah.
Game time temperature this year was 53 in Brookings when they played. So
it will not be 53 degrees in Bozeman on Saturday.
Well, if it's 53 degrees, the weather is no factor in that game unless there's a freak rainstorm or something. The Bozeman, Montana
10-day forecast. I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Now we're doing our amateur.
Because that's a silly. That was too far. It'll be a high of 42, but it's going to be 20% chance of precipitation for now. And weather out there could. No, I'm sorry, wrong one. I'm looking at the wrong one. It won't be that dissimilar. He was right. High of 47. Wow. That's crazy.
What?
That is crazy.
Daily forecast
Garrett,
next 10 days.
I apologize. I was not familiar with your game on that one.
Well, I mean, that is a little. Well, of course, the SDSU game was at night, so it actually was pretty warm for 53 at night. But yeah, I mean, 47.
For
no real winds.
Game, it should be around that.
I mean, that is catching a. That's a break if that's what they get. Now I think like I said, they're getting snow tomorrow is what I'm seeing. It looks like they're going to get snow tomorrow and then maybe Monday, Tuesday, but then it kind of tapers off and then it warms up, which for them is, I mean, last year when William and Mary went there, I think it was a freezer for them and they were,
well, that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, my bad. 2 years ago, because last year was obviously SDS. I'm getting the years missed. Last year was when the Bison blocked the extra points. So, But yeah, no, I got to look up. I was going to say, what did we think of the Montana State? Obviously, it was a bit of a painful one for our friend Jason Eck. I thought I mean, you kind of, that's Jason. It is who he is. He's going to take gambles, but you're going to get burned sometimes. And I'm guessing he probably had more faith in his kicker than he should have with that onside kick. Is that took a game that was still, I don't think they would have won, or maybe I think Montana State probably still wins by 2 or 3 touchdowns, but it maybe keeps the game closer, or gives them a shot if they don't just implode there after that.
Yeah, I think in that game, Eck was throwing it all on the table, doing everything and playing to win, and kind of like, I think he felt like, back, when he was in Brookings, I think he treated it like SDSU treated games in Fargo when they were, still trying to catch up and everything, and you had to play to win. And so you have to take some risk. You have to take some gambles. And, it was a tight game, but when you're on the road in the playoffs against that caliber of a team and you gamble and you lose, you're going to lose big. And it gave momentum immediately. If it would have worked, everybody would call him brilliant. That's the Eck
Yeah.
experience. New Mexico gets to have that experience now.
Is that official now, or has it been?
That posted the day after the game that he is going to be the coach of New Mexico. So
New Mexico's made it official now. I haven't had a chance yet to look at their official.
I guess I haven't seen if New Mexico has officially posted it yet.
I saw that last night. That was breaking on Football Scoop that he was very, unfortunately for him, but there's just no. It was
posted 11 hours ago.
I mean, unfortunately, very similar to what happened when he was the offensive, as we talk about him on. Bad things happen when he plays Montana State in the playoffs, because this was very similar to the Jackrabbit semifinal, where the news started breaking that he was probably going to get the Idaho job right as they were going. I'm not suggesting that led to anything. Certainly last night, I don't think it would have mattered. But yeah, and then like Patrick said, I saw the quarterback Jack Lane went into the second straight year their starting quarterback goes in the portal. And we'll see, because there could be guys whenever SDSU or USD get knocked out who go in for either of those teams. But people got to realize there's less places now. I can't remember what exactly it was. There's less spots now in the FBS.
Yeah,
going to the portal, there's even less than there was a year ago. These guys are just.
And these numbers in the portal are insane already. And the FBS teams haven't cleared. And from the sounds of it, they won't be clearing their rosters and paring them down to 105 till after spring ball. So, I mean, you could see a bunch of these guys who actually end up on another team, then end up getting cut. And there's a lot, and I think part of the problem with it is, Kevin says there's 6,000 people in the portal right now. It's insane. And I think part of the problem is when you look at it, these guys are getting agents now. Well, how do agents make money? They make money off of getting you a deal. They don't get you a deal by staying at your current program. So you've got people who are motivated to move them, giving them advice. And it's bad advice. And for a lot of these guys, and yeah, it's
true about Marshall. I saw they pulled out of their bowl game, but
they pulled out. They've lost 25 players already to the portal.
Now, to be fair, bowl games are kind of, as I've said multiple times here, if you're not in the plaff, bowl games are kind of BS. But
I think eventually,
shout out to my team for being in the Snoop Dogg Bowl, Arizona Bowl for Shizzle.
I think we might eventually see bowls go the way of the dinosaur if they keep expanding the playoffs, or at least get trimmed down.
Somebody was floating the idea of an NIT type thing, which I don't know if we'll ever see that. I don't know if we'll ever see that, but it's intriguing.
It could be fun.
Yeah,
but
I mean, Well, I mean, and again,
what's the difference between an NIT tournament for that and a G5 playoff?
Well, part of me, the one thing I would hate about that is the current NIT just brings in a bunch of
right.
The current NIT just now brings in nothing but power schools who are terrible. It used to be the old NIT would be a little more of a true bring in everybody. It would be a little more merit based. Now it just caters to crappy. So I hope it wouldn't be that. And of course, we've speculated here. We think eventually a split's coming, and I think you can kind of see the seeds being planted by how much whining we're getting from the SEC and all these schools that felt like they didn't get a bid. I mean, again, I'm sure expansion's coming, but already it's Boise got seeded too high. Well, I guarantee you, if they get their show run in that first game, you're going to have the calls of, why are we giving these guys a bid anyway? They don't belong,
Mm-hmm.
And Boise could go to the national title game. I guarantee you the next year, whatever team gets that bid, if they get their show run,
mm-hmm.
this is going to happen eventually. Those major conferences, may just be the Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to do their own thing eventually. So, the whole system's going to get due for a shakeup.
Right. And back on the Idaho thing, I do think they are fully capable of continuing their upward trajectory as a program. I think they are a very attractive location for an FCS coach coming in. You've got a
fan base.
You got a solid fan base. You've got a program that's willing to invest and wants to win. You've got a decent foundation. Eka's kind of built that up. It almost feels like if you were to make a comparison to like SDSU, it feels like when Bono left the wrestling program.
Yeah.
But now the program as a name is a successful name, and you can attract a solid coach. Makes you wonder if they're going to try to keep one of X guys, Schleissner or Dan Jackson's there.
I'm a little disappointed. Jason took nothing for me. I'm sure he's gonna. I mean, obviously, any FBS job is usually a pretty big pay bump, and I'm sure New Mexico has just not been a very good job. But Jason's kind of, I guess if you want to get to FBS, you kind of have to take whatever's there.
Mm-hmm. New
Mexico has just not been a very good job, really, ever. I don't know. I just, I mean, obviously they did this year they went 5-7 and they got a pretty notable upset win over Washington State. Although Washington State kind of ended up cratering anyway. The Cougars were ranked at the time and they beat them. And I remember they had Bronco Mendenhall, who. So I mean, maybe New Mexico's making some investment because Mendenhall is a good coach. Of course, ironically, Montana State beat them at the start of the year when I think I gotta look up the score because Montana State got down huge in that game and scored 21 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, to come back.
Otherwise, maybe we would be talking about the semifinal being. Who knows what the seeding would look like if they hadn't won that game because, obviously, maybe the Jacks are in Bozeman tomorrow and the Coyotes are in Fargo next week. Who knows? That certainly was probably along with them going undefeated. But we'll see that. Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, saying the final goal is Madison, maybe. You do have to get in the. It is tough to break into the FBS, and some. If you turn around a job. If you do well at a place like New Mexico, you're going to write your own ticket, and Mendenhall just went to Utah State. He only won 5 games, but Mendenhall had a pretty good history. But he did very well at BYU. He was great at BYU. Went to Virginia, was kind of so-so, had been out of it, and then went back to New Mexico. And basically, I don't know how long he was there, but yeah, I mean, if he does well in New Mexico, he'll ride his own ticket again. But yeah, I love the fit he had in Idaho. I thought that was a really good fit, and I'm like, maybe another year or two you can get something better. But I kind of thought the same thing when Craig Bohl left NDSU for Wyoming. I'm like, really, Wyoming? That's the best you can do. But he ended up staying there for a long time. So, but I get the feeling too that Eck won't be in New Mexico very long. He will either move on or move out. And Yeah, that's a good point with Brian about Vegan. I mean, he was up for a lot of these jobs. I mean, Ince going to Fresno was shocking to me because, again, I think we've talked a little bit about how Ince probably didn't get the best deal in Fargo because anything less than undefeated is bad there. But for him to get and that had been I'd seen reporting that Vegan was the front runner in Fresno 24 hours before it went to Ince. So I don't know what happened there, but Ince, for him to get that job on he'd only spent 1 year, and granted, maybe he did a really good job, and I think he was recruiting well at the linebacker position, but for him to get a job in California when he'd been primarily a Midwestern guy, it was just weird. I mean, to get a head coaching job in California when you've been Midwestern all your life and you've only spent 1 year in California, and it wasn't not like this year's USC team has lit the world on fire. They must have seen something, but I did read something in the Fresno paper. He's going to be in for a bit of a culture shock because apparently they don't have an indoor practice facility at Fresno. They practice on a ponding field or something. So just remember, just remember, guys, that FBS is not everybody at the FBS has it as good as some of us have it at the FCS, apparently, even in Fresno, I guess. So I think you're muted.
I'm muted. Gotcha.
You're muted.
Yep. No, you're right. No, I said nope. He's gone. He got muted for a little bit, and now he's gone. So don't do that crap.
Sorry about that
crap all over my chat.
Yeah, too bad. Not the crap I was expecting, and especially with what we got coming up next week.
Yeah, we're pretty loose with our morals around here, but don't be ridiculous. So
you're right about Tommy. I mean, he had that. I'm very curious to see how the Payton Award goes in a couple weeks in Frisco because I think it should go to Cam, but man, you can really make the case for Tommy because he'll have games where he doesn't do anything passing, but he runs, and then he's put together a very solid year, and I don't know. I think he had one interception yesterday. Did he throw one or two picks in the quarterfinal? I know he threw the one early, but
yeah, he hasn't had many INTs. He's had one.
He'd only had one before last night. Period. It was against Eastern Washington. So we talk about how good Cam has been with his and Cam's actually started to throw some more picks in the playoffs, which has been strange. So playoffs don't matter. They matter a little bit. Well, obviously not for the Payton. Yeah, that award is regular season, but I mean it'll be interesting to see how the Payton Award shakes out, especially because I know there are people up in Fargo who thought Cam's last game might weigh on them because he lost to USD. I didn't think it was that bad of a game because they were 4 minutes away from winning, and you could argue that loss was a little more on Tim Polasek and some of the play calling than it was.
And in the general sentiment I got from most voters that I talked to and everything was Cam was Superman in that game. Like
he was.
Sentiment about that last game that I could see.
I know there's always a fear about recency bias, but it may not have been the best numbers wise in terms of accuracy, but yeah, he was the only reason they had a chance to win that game. Otherwise, USD might have blown them out. And that's the thing when you talk about what the semifinal in Bozeman could look like. As much as we talk about how USD's defense has slipped a little bit, they were fine against everybody but Cam Miller. And of course, now they have to go up against Tommy Mellott. So that could be the same kind of effect on steroids too, because you're not literally on steroids. Don't get that impression, but on that same effect hyped up because now you're not in the Dakota Dome, you're in Bozeman, and it's going to be, I don't know if they had capacity. I think I heard they were going to have a sellout today. I don't know if it was, but you know it'll be a sellout next week. So, yeah, I think USD's defense has been better than maybe the stats say, but they've been broken down by a really good player by a quarterback who's mobile. That's been a bit of their Achilles heel. The running backs they shut down the Marty Brown within the issue. Regular running backs haven't hurt him. It's the guys who are the mobile quarterbacks like Gronowski and Cam who can bite them. And that's going to be the thing. Can they contain Tommy? And I think it was, I can't remember who, I think it was Daniel or somebody said it. If he is going to run, they need to pop him. Again, I'm not saying take a cheap shot, obviously, but you need to make him pay if he's going to run on you. You can't let him just take a free run. They've got to be physical in that game because, and MSU's, Montana State's not going to turn it over 5 times, and I don't expect USD to turn it over 4 times either. That was pretty abnormal for them. But, playoff games, they don't always go the way you expect. I mean, it's just week to week, they're different. You can't necessarily, but the only you definitely can make a point right now. The most consistent teams right now in this tournament are Montana State and SDSU. I mean, it's not really close right there.
But here's the thing about that. I see people in the chat and stuff saying, oh, NDSU looks vulnerable, and I've said USD's defense hasn't looked great, and I do put a little more stock in like USD's recent performances just because they don't have the track record in the playoffs, right? But you see it all the time in the playoffs, and we always fall for this. Oh, this one game, their very last game, you see it all the time on the message boards and on Facebook pages. The Big Sky sucks because they had some close games, or the Big Sky looks way better than the MBFC because they had close games and let Tarleton score points. And then all of a sudden the next week it's completely flipped on its head, and it happens over and over and over and over again. And then what happens? The next week that team comes out and looks like all world beaters again. When it comes to NDSU, I expect nothing less than them to be fully prepared and locked in for this game. I'll throw every stupid overused cliche you want at that game. I have a hard time just thinking that, NDSU's defense looked a little shaky, so SDSU is going to walk all over them. Like, no, that's absolutely incorrect in my opinion. For a team that has been that proven. Now, Brian does make a good point that NDSU's banged up on the O-line.
Yeah, they lost Jake Rock a week ago.
Yeah, that's a huge concern, especially when the Jacks D-line has been on the upswing all year long. They've just gotten better and better and better and better and better. But
and I've said this too, with the health when their O-line was healthy. And Gray Zabel, the Pierre native, he's probably going to be. He might even be a first-round draft pick. So it's not like they don't have. Right. So you still have that anchor. But I said this. Obviously, Marty Brown. He's won the Rice. He's the freshman of the year. When they've played teams that match up physically with them, he's not really been a factor in the games.
Right.
And that even happened today because we mentioned how good Mercer's defense was against the run. I mean, he only ran for 58 on 11 carries, which isn't bad. I mean, they didn't necessarily run him that much, but against SDSU and USD, Marty Brown was not a factor in those first couple of in those first 2 games. We'll see what happens on Saturday. Well, it has literally been against SDSU and USD, who are really the only 2 teams that could physically match them this year during the regular season. Cam has to carry the whole show. I mean, I don't think we've really given him enough credit for how much he is carrying that team. And again, now Cole Payton, they lost him for the year in the SDSU game. I know we kind of poo-pooed the Cole Payton package, but Cam is. I mean, he is literally, when they've had to go up against a team that can physically match them, he is carrying their offense right now. It's there's no question. So if he doesn't play, and he was, I think he was, I don't think he was necessarily 100% because he still had that ankle issue from when he'd gotten hurt at the week before, but he was probably maybe 90, 85%. I think he's probably 100%, but that's a tough standard to be at, man, when you have to be 100% each week, but he's been hitting it. If he doesn't have that 100% game, and this is his final game in Fargo, so like you said, but man, it is really all on him to make the plays, because it'll be interesting to see what they look like next year too. Because when he's gone, they're going to have to start over at quarterback a little bit. A bit, I should say.
Yeah. One thing I do have to point out, and as much as I give Kevin shit about the SoCon and everything and gave him crap about the Mercer game this week, you got to give Mercer credit when you're like, oh, well, they're getting a lot of penetration on the line. That is a damn good defense. Not just a good defense, a damn good defense. There was a stretch at the beginning of the year where that defense was outscoring their own offense. Yeah. I think like the first 4 games, if I remember right, they would have won those games without the offense scoring a point. Like, that is a damn good defense. So I wouldn't get too carried away with, they didn't look great.
You got to give
really good defense they were facing.
The last couple, Furman's defense last year, the last couple SoCon champs have had good defense. This one had no offense. They got the 1 touchdown after they got down 14-0, but this was exactly what everybody thought was going to be the problem with Mercer, was that even if they could hold NDSU in check with their defense, they weren't going to be able to do anything against NDSU's defense. And NDSU's defense has issues too. Their back end is struggling, I think. But yeah, I think Mercer, again, for a game that was 31-7, I think they gave themselves as good of an accounting as they could have. They, like I said, I'm sure there was a part of NDSU that maybe just kind of put it in cruise control when they got up. Maybe when you get up 14-0 6 minutes into the game, and you feel like you're just going to roll a team, it's got to be a little difficult. But I know I see Hayes is the backup. I think they've got another recruit they're pretty high on, and they always have a recruit they're high on. But I think Cole Payton could come back. We'll see what he does at this point. I think that was a labrum injury. I'm saying that was a labrum injury when he got hurt. So maybe he's going to hit the portal. I don't really know where he stands anymore. But yeah, they're just being, a lot of this is Cam right now. If he does not, if the Jacks can get a little more pressure on, and even today, this wasn't, he threw 2 picks today. He got sacked 4 times. You can say what you want about the game, them getting out of the big lead. I don't know if he's thrown 2 picks in a game this year. I don't know if he's been sacked 4 times. Yeah. These are, so, there's, like I said, and one of the interesting things, although, or to tight end, that's a good point. He could, they teased that a little bit. We got to look, and we'll probably be wrapping up here in a minute or two anyways, because next week's going to be off the chain, regardless of how both games go. Although home field means a little more in college, but the old adage is sometimes it's easier to be the road team because there is more pressure on the home team. And I agree with you. The idea that NDSU in theory seems vulnerable, but that this is what they've been saving it up for. They knew this game was probably coming. I think the Jacks knew this was probably coming. It was interesting because I read an article where after that USD loss, allegedly they had players crying in the locker room at the thought of potentially they had just lost the number 2 seed. Potentially they were going to have to go on the road, likely to SDSU in the semifinals. That was the fear after the game against USD. And that to me was just very bizarre because I'm like, I get that was a tough loss, but most of the teams I've been, past Bison teams, I think, would have just been pissed off. The Jacks, I think, would have been pissed off. I think the Coyotes this year would have been pissed off if they'd been in that position. So it really feels like, to me, the Bison this year felt like they needed the home field, and the fans and the media up there feel like they needed the home field. Is this finally the year where the home field breaks? Other than the one, obviously 2016 is the only other home loss they had to Madison. I mean, NDSU's been leaking a lot they've been giving up a lot more pass yards than they did when the Jackrabbits went there the first time. We saw USD get to them. Abilene Christian had some good fortune. I mean, it'll be interesting. I think, I think there's a lot of pressure right now on the Bison. I don't know that we've seen, it's not quite, into the dynasty type pressure, but it's just kind of a fishbowl up there right now. And if they don't win this game, they're really going to hear it. I mean, put it like this. They're really going to hear it if they do not win this game. Like, it will be as long a winter and off season as it's ever been up there, because if you can't beat the Jackrabbits with the Walter Payton Award winner in your own, if this is the last thing that's not fallen, that, we've lost a national championship to them. We've lost conference, but by God, we do not lose home playoff games to South Dakota State University. What happens if that goes away?
Well, and that's another storyline for that. That is, if you think about Mark in this senior class and all the
things they've broken down,
the hiccup game every season, taking that away,
undefeated at home,
going undefeated, all these things that they've knocked off, beating the Grizz in the playoffs, all these things, right? The last one, the very, very last one.
This is the last one. This is the last hurdle.
This is the last thing. This is the last dragon to slay. And
you're going into the mouth of the dragon, literally.
Yep. You're going into the den to slay the dragon. And man, that is something it's really hard because Cam's been so damn good this year. But when it comes down to it, I'm gonna put my chips behind Mark Gronowski in spots like that. I just am.
Well, and he's got to be playing with a chip on his shoulder a little bit, because man, I saw the reaction on social media after he finally lost to him, and you would have thought that, I'm sure he heard it. I'm sure he heard it from those Bison fans who were waiting 4 or 5 years to finally say they beat him, and they got their shots in. Well, you got a chance. And not only that, but he's got a chance to break Easton Stick's. He's tied with Easton Stick for the all-time FCS wins record. I mean, the script writes itself. It really does. I mean, he could break the record on the Fargo Dome turf. But, it's one of those things where I think I talked myself into them winning in 2016 and then 2018 when they played up there. So, you never know. That they're probably going to get a couple calls. It happens. You can ask Incarnate Word of 2022 if they're going to get a couple calls in the Fargo Dome. It'll just be interesting. And obviously, going back to that last meeting, we remember Polisek kind of went a little nuts, and that kind of turned the temperature up. I would expect that's going to happen again. I think he's going to have to pull out some of those type stops. I think that may be I'm not saying the Jacks lost their composure in that first game, but they've got to be ready to match that, because I think he's going to try and pull some of this. Part of Polisek's thing is he's trying to bring back the Bison were the bully on the block. They've lost kind of the aura of being the big bad. They're still a very good, great program, but it's not. He wants to bring back when they were the bully. Like, the aura of invincibility. And they have not had that since he was an assistant. And I think, that's what he's gonna try and pull something on that sideline. I just feel like it's coming. I don't know when, I don't know where. And I like the guy too. I like people thought I was ripping him. I'm like, no, more power to him. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. It's kind of a fire and ice between him and Rogers. Rogers is not going to really. Rogers is going to be the more, he's not going to be. You're really going to have to do something to piss him off, to get a display like that. But they're going to have to control themselves quite a bit because it's going to be like I said, it's the mouth of the dragon. But I think they're in a better position to go play this game than they were in late October in a lot of different ways. So we'll see how it goes.
So Kevin asks, "Our QB wins a thing?" You know what? They keep the stat and they keep the record. So I'm going to count it. And
I was wondering how does it go when you come in as a backup if like the starter falls?
Right. I don't know. I don't
think the national championship loss wasn't credited to Gronowski. Was it?
I don't know.
Barely in the thing.
That one was counted, if it counted as a loss for him or not. But I don't know. In the end, I don't think that one really is that's not going to affect Mark's legacy or anything. I mean,
that would certainly be the irony if we do get Montana State and SDSU, because if they end up facing each other, of course, Malott and Gronowski, who I've heard have a pretty good, I don't know how close they are. I mean, I know Bauman and Gronowski have worked some camps together down in Sioux Falls, so they seem to be on pretty good terms. I know Gronowski before the semifinal with MSU said he's talked a little bit with Malott, and of course the connection there is that they both got injured early in championship games and basically had to watch as their team lost. And, that's it would be kind of ironic if their careers end, at least at the FCS level, playing against each other in a championship game. But, we'll see if that comes to be. But Sam Houston, yeah, I guess they did. Oh, that's lame. If I didn't see the broadcast today, I'll have to rewatch a little bit of it, but that's so stupid. I kind of had the feeling that was what the deal is, that the start. It should be like a relief pitcher in baseball. If you don't, if the relief pitcher comes into a 0-0 game and gives up the run, he takes the loss. Like Gronowski played like 4 or 5 plays and the game was scoreless when he left. Hell, Keaton Heide didn't end up playing that badly under the circumstances. But, so, yeah, that's a stupid rule, but, whatever. I guess I don't even know what bowl Sam Houston's going in now, although Casey Keeler just left. So, to go coach at Temple.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be a big week. We got a big week coming up.
Yes.
And I don't know. I'm a little zoned out here. I'm sorry.
Well, what did you have at the tailgates? What were you cooking this morning?
We had some brisket. At the tailgate. Turned out pretty good. Chad brought breakfast sandwiches. Those are always fantastic. We had some egg bacon there. That was really good. So it was a good time. Turned out pretty well.
Quentin in there.
Time. Quentin throwing down the big predictions right away. That a boy. Look at him. That away.
Nice. No, man. He ended up on the winning side of a lot of those. Most of those. That's right. With NDSU. So.
Right. Yeah. So I'm with Seth. I hope my employer's not expecting me to be super productive this week.
Good for you. My employer expects me to be very productive next Saturday.
Well, fortunately for you, our distraction. I mean, it's your job, so this isn't really fair, but our distraction is what you'll be focused on, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, it'll be like I said, we'll probably know our plans here pretty soon. Hopefully I would assume I would be shocked if we don't have somebody up in Fargo this time. I pretty much just blew out my show, although I do have highlights from the SDSU women. Picked up a nice win over UNI today.
Yep.
That's 9 wins for them. They actually got 10.
That's the UNI team who beat
Iowa State.
Iowa State. So,
and they got a game with Texas, I think, next. Hopefully this won't get think it's next Saturday. Might get no, it's Sunday actually.
What do they got to do to get ranked at this point?
I'm surprised because they were ranked, and then they lose a close game to Duke, and then another close game. I think it was the other one against? I can't remember. But then they beat Oregon, who was ranked. I mean, I guess they got to beat Texas. I mean, football team's already beaten a Texas school. How hard can it be?
Right. Oh, it's not
be a little harder.
Basically the same thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think it's going to be however this shakes out, it's going to be one of the more unique days probably in sports history for the state to have the flagship universities playing on national television for a chance to play each other potentially in a national title game. I would say that if they both somehow win, I think next week could be more epic than whatever we get in the championship game. Whatever matchup comes in the championship game, because frankly, obviously SDSU, if you go to Fargo and win, that's been years in the making. Montana State, if they win, I think that's expected. If USD wins, I don't think a whole lot of people are expecting that. It's going to be hard for the championship game to match, I think, the hype of what we're getting this coming week.
I don't know, because I think
maybe I don't know.
If I look at the potential national championship matchups, right, I think the most intriguing one for me from a football standpoint is SDSU and Montana State. Seeing the SDSU
run defense against Montana
State. I think SDSU matches up of anybody in the bracket. They match up best with them because you can have Tucker Large and Dallas Beanham and put those guys on islands and try to lock down the run game and see how that turns out for you and adjust from there. And I'm not saying the Jacks win that way, but I think that's what the best intriguing matchup is. If I look at that matchup as a Jacks fan, of the 4 national title appearances, that would be the most intriguing one we've had so far. Like, that would be the most exciting. That'd be the most up in the air, because I'm gonna flat say it. I was pretty certain we'd have beat Sam Houston State, and we would have had Mark Gronowski not gotten hurt, and I think they would have by a couple touchdowns. All the credit in the world to Zach Hines, or not Zach Hines. Jesus, Keaton Heidi. All the
it's late.
All the credit in the world to Keaton Heidi, but it's a completely different offense with Mark Gronowski in there. And they win. I think they win that game comfortably. But you know what? That doesn't take away anything. Sam Houston won. So going into that game, I felt pretty confident going into that game. You felt really confident going into that NDSU game. You just did. Then going into Montana last year, felt super confident with that team. So this would be the most intriguing one. There would be a lot of anxiety, and I think the build up to that game would be a riot, because there is a SDSU and Montana State have played so frequently recently, particularly in the playoffs. There is something of a rivalry there, and that would be a lot of fun. I think that'd be a really fun build up.
And they play next year too.
Right. And they play next year again.
They go to Bozeman.
And yes, there would be tons of intrigue and conversation and the overtime game and everything else with the South Dakota matchup. I just think the most exciting one for me would be Montana State and SDSU. I think NDSU's run defense would not be a great matchup against Montana State. I think their defense would struggle there, and they need Cam to outscore Montana State in that game. So I don't know. I know. And Brian says Kyler thinks completely different. Kyler of FCS Fans Nation. He also thought Illinois State was going to beat UC Davis. And I could bring up a couple other dozen bad choices he's made, including getting a Grizz tattoo because he opened his big mouth. So I agree to disagree with Kyler on that.
I mean, I don't think there's a bad matchup. I mean, in terms of excitement level, I don't think there's I think either one will get people's ears up. No pun intended for if you're an SDSU fan. But yeah, I think was Angel hurt today? That's actually a good point. I didn't really see Angel running the ball that much.
He didn't get dressed. From what I heard. And then the other one I was concerned about is Caleb Frankel dinged his ankle up. He got up. Yeah. Yep.
I think it's Francel.
Sorry,
I'm wondering who the hell is Frankel.
Yep, sorry, Francel. I don't know why I said Jeepers Creepers. Just struggle bus all day today. It
was cold.
Yeah, he rolled up his ankle a little bit, and he was able to walk off the field
before the end of the game. I remember, right?
Yeah, yep. It was the third quarter.
Well,
and it was like, okay, get everybody out. That's enough. No more.
We want to talk about another huge player that wasn't in the last SDSU NDSU game, Mr. Large. And
right.
The no pun intended. I want to say no pun intended, but his name is kind of a pun on into of itself. I mean, not that NDSU didn't have guys they were missing either. I don't know. They'll have guys out, they'll have guys back, but Tucker's presence in that game, that's the matchup we should probably be. Much as we're talking about how Gronowski, you take Mark in that matchup, and I agree. What's Cam going to do with Tucker Large? How's Tucker back there and Cam? That's probably.
Well, Tucker's just so good in coverage for a safety.
I mean, you wonder, other than Colorado, who, by the way, had the Heisman Trophy winner tonight in Travis Hunter, other than Colorado, who is maybe the best cover? Who's the best cover team that he's faced, Cam, this year? Maybe USD, but he still kind of had a pretty good game against them. Who would be the bet? Who would give him the kind of trouble that Tucker Large could give him? Who is? I don't know if there's a player that he's faced this year beyond obviously what they faced in the FBS game. It's going to be interesting because and Raja, yeah, you're right. Raja Nelson was huge. Now, although they also Bryce Lance has had a big year too. Yeah, I mean that was and like again, they had guys out too. You can play that game all you want for the last game. So, but forget that. Let's just talk about who's in this game. How is he going to handle? How is the Tucker Large? That to me is going to be one of the more intriguing matchups. What does Tucker do to their receivers? How does he play into this game? Because I think he's going to if they win, he's going to play a major role. Like that. If you want me to make one prediction, I'm not going to really make it. I think I know how these games are going to play out, but I'm not going to put it into the ether because I want them to play out. If I make one prediction, yeah, if SDSU wins, Tucker's going to have at least one pick or one takeaway type play. I mean, that or something. He's going to do something to dramatically affect that game on defense. He has to. I mean, there's no, and for me, it's probably a pick. I mean, he's got to. Yeah, I mean, they would have won that game if they could have turned Miller over one time, and they couldn't do it. It was the one turnover at the end. That was the difference. That wasn't really the difference, but well, maybe it was. I mean, obviously, Mark had driven them downfield, but they couldn't get a turnover in that first game. Tucker is going to cause chaos if they're going to win, and that'll be one of many, many great matchups. And we'll see what next week brings. Hopefully, we're talking nice and long into the night. Even longer than we did tonight? No, probably not.
Yeah.
I have no idea where I'm.
I'll probably have more juice because I won't be up all night making a brisket the night before. And
I was gonna say, are you gonna go up to Fargo or are you just gonna stay down here?
As of right now, I'll be staying down here. It was a bit of a mess last time, but we'll see. Every time I say I'm not going to the game, I've ended up at the game the last 3 times. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Brian just desperately wants you to make a bet with him.
I've never gotten the whole taco bet thing with him. I don't.
Well, they do tacos because it's frowned upon to bet money on like Facebook pages and comments and stuff. So they always do tacos.
Man, I'm not. I'm
And
not
the way
good.
that works is he just ends up buying tacos for everybody. Not that he loses, but
I'd rather not bet on teams I'm covering, but like I said, we'll see. I think it's gonna be fun next week.
It's gonna be a really fun week overall. Really looking forward to it. I know I'm running out of gas here tonight. I'm mispronouncing Francel's name. I'm
Frankel.
just a mess. Yeah, right. And
You start calling Mark Gronkowski before long, probably.
oh God, I'd have to drive my truck off a cliff or something if I do that. But no, really looking forward to it. It's going to be really, really fun. Semifinal in Fargo. We've been down this road before. Let's see if it turns out different. It feels like it should turn out different, but I've felt that way before, so who knows? But yep, lot of exciting storylines this week. And the one thing I will say, the last thing I'll say on this game is this team has always had a knack for when they've got an axe to grind about anything, be it something a team said or revenge. Like this week they were upset about, how many points they gave up to Incarnate Word last time. I know I've been hearing the team has been looking forward to this ever since the marker game was done. They've been looking forward to having a second shot at those guys. So it is going to be a fun one. It's going to be a slobber knocker. I expect more points than the last time, and that's all I've got for now.
I don't expect too many more points. It's probably something like the 20-17, 24 to. But yeah, I will be shocked if it's 13-9 again. I guess my last note for that is, though I do know, and in fact I think Mark said it after the Montana game, they did claim they kind of used the not getting the 2 seed as a chip on their shoulder thing. I get the sense they wanted to go back to Fargo.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have minded. I'm not saying they would have refused the number 2 seed and the chance to host the Bison and Brookings. But I think, that cliche of they want the smoke. They want the smoke this time. We'll see if that doesn't mean they're going to win. Could horribly backfire. It has before, but
right.
This team, they've been unaffected by everything. Like I said, week to week, new game. But yeah, I think they wanted this from day one. I think if I were an SDSU fan, the one thing that encourages me and says maybe this is different was just how devastated NDSU was at the potential of losing the home field and how they really seemed to feel like they needed this home field and how the Jackrabbits want to go up there and how the Jackrabbits feel like we will beat you anywhere. We want you anywhere, but we kind of want you up there. Like, we'll see. We'll see if any of this matters in a week from now. But they want, that's my last thought. They want the smoke. And, I will say too, the team down south in Vermilion wants the smoke. So we'll see who ends up getting the smoke in 1 week, and it will be a lot of fun.
Yep. And with that, if you can't catch the game at home or you don't want to watch the game at home, go up to our awesome sponsor, Cubby Sports Bar and Grills, downtown Brookings. They've got the Italian nachos there. They are fantastic. All proceeds are going to Alex's Lemonade stand. It's a limited time for this month of December. Go on down there. If you take a picture and post it to Twitter, tag Cubbies, tag Jackrabbit Illustrated, we are still donating $14 per picture posted.
And again, guys, I'll plug my own deal here.
Yes.
There you go. Dakota News Now. We did have our post-game show. It is posted online. Probably a little more coyote content today because we were up. Most of the show was in Vermilion. Obviously, last week, most of it was in Brookings. But I had a good interview with Jimmy. Next week, we'll let you know what we're doing. A lot of reaction from today's game is online. And again, next week's games, both semifinals are on ABC. KSFY, 11 a.m., just like today, Jacks and Bison, and 2:30, Bobcats and Coyotes. The winners goes to the national title game. Unfortunately, the national title game is not on ABC. That'll be on ESPN. We'll worry about that when we get there. But yep, Dakota News Now next week. We will have you. That's a nice thing. It's on free over-the-air TV. You can watch it anywhere. You can stream it online too at the ESPN, whatever they do. And we'll let you know about our plans. But we'll have plenty. We'll blow this out, and hopefully, one way or the other, we will be in Frisco as well in a couple weeks. So
yes, and
Yeah.
people, if you have not been paying attention to the Road to Frisco stuff that Zach has been putting out with Marco on Dakota News Now, it is awesome. It's like a local college game day focused on the teams that you care about. So
I'll also shout out to Cooper Seamer on that and Parker Brown. He's been doing some stuff in the tailgates as well. Might go to an hour this week. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm hoping we can get live in Bozeman and Fargo, but we'll see how that goes. We'll figure it out. But yeah, we'll get a lot, and it'll be fun. Rest up, guys, and we will see you next Saturday for what will hopefully be a championship show.
see ya. We're out.